Welcome to Canada's podcast.
Hello, this is Robert Smigel with Canada's podcast, where we talk to the entrepreneurs who are making it happen here in Alberta. Today, our guest is Brad Warren from Calgary, Alberta. Brad started his first business at the age of 32 years old during the heart and center of the pandemic. Fast forward to today, he has founded more than 6 startup companies and acquired a majority or minority equity in 8 more. He is involved in automotive, construction, real estate, e-commerce, sportswear, accounting, and the list goes on. Most of the time he is spent at Our Invisible Empire, which is his company, but also spends a lot of time working in other companies and respected industries. Brad and his wife have 2 children and work closely together running their businesses. They don't have a flashy lifestyle, but do live a very busy life, and he wouldn't want to have it any other way. Brad, welcome to Canada's podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to share your entrepreneurial journey with all our listeners.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you having me on.
Great. Okay, let's get started here. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and your current business. I know you've got a lot going on, but maybe give us a real short version of what exactly do you do with all these companies, and how can you spread yourself so vast to doing a lot of different things with a lot of different companies? How do you do all that?
Talented wife. Very, very blessed to have some amazing staff. And, background and experience of large scale management, delegation, structure, process. And if you stay within that, it doesn't mean we're perfect all the time. We probably make more mistakes than anyone and spread thin, but yeah, you can make it happen. You have to be very disciplined, and you have to have very, very good support staff and make sure you have all the people that are very strong in the areas that you're very weak.
Okay. What inspired you or motivated you to be an entrepreneur? I imagine you've had jobs in the past and so forth, but what was that moment or time you said, you know what, I think I can do this on my own?
Yeah, that's a good question. I will always say, I think even from high school, I've always wanted to start my own business. We started even doing a business plan, me and a buddy of mine, and it would have been grade 12. I left school early and got into the workforce. So I don't recommend that to anybody now, but it seemed to work out for me. But I think when I was 18 years old, me and my buddy started a business plan, went to the banks, met with BDC. Like, we were very close to actually getting our own thing going back then. So I can remember wanting to do that from even 16, 17. And then I got on the tools, kind of found a trade, did what people did and paid the bills and partied and was young and whatever. And then I was blessed to hook up with my mentor and the founder of a retail service business at the time. And I think that job, I worked in that job, grew within the company, became a shareholder, got on the board of directors eventually when it became public. And to be honest, I think that job gave me the insight as close to an entrepreneur as I could be. Like, I was commissions, very heavy bonus. My bonuses were rated much more heavier to my salary. So I was in so much control of my income depending on performance. I mean, how many different clients, how many different businesses did you bring on? How many different stores and provinces and cities did we scale to? And I think I fell in love with the hustle in that area. So I actually think that job kept me from starting my own business for a very long time. So I think that decade in that job was probably as close to it. And then as soon as we were kind of done with that and I moved on from that situation, it was a given. There was really no other thought. So it was just kind of picking up where I guess my thought process was when I was younger, before I found that career that I sunk my teeth into. And there was no thought process coming out of that of going to work for somebody else, and not even 1%.
Right. So you decided, obviously, you're going out on your own. You need financing. How did you get the financing, and how do you currently make money in the business now, since you've got all these different things going on? Obviously, break it down for me.
We got financing we did our very first startup company June 1st of 2020, which was Boulevard Auto Glass. I always had the idea of Invisible Empire being a small business, kind of my main company that supports all the companies, a small business and entrepreneur support center. I always had that idea. I kind of visioned it right from the beginning, but you needed to start somewhere. Probably some of the biggest mistakes I made was doing too much too quick out the gate. Probably should have focused on some of the startup companies instead of trailing off. But so we founded Boulevard Auto Glass, and that financing we got from a government startup loan through a bank. And then past that, not, I would even, would I say due to intelligence? I'm not sure now, but me and my wife actually financed the majority of everything moving forward. My wife owns, and we started together a accredited accounting firm. So my wife owns White Raven Accounting, which is one of our more profitable companies. So that was able to back a lot of some of the other companies during the startup time. And we also were blessed to have high earnings at a young age. We worked very hard in our job. So we had, I wouldn't say we had lots of money, but I would say we had lots of open debt. And so over the course of the first couple of years, not maybe as educated as we should be, we leveraged that open debt much more than we probably should have. So we probably financed a lot more of it than we would have liked at the time.
Okay, I want you to give me one piece of knowledge or information about your industry that you can share that would benefit our listeners. I know that you've got a lot of industries, but maybe narrow it down to the invisible empire and what you're doing.
I mean, auto glass, accounting, sportswear, promotional products, that stuff's pretty niche. I mean, it might not benefit, but with White Raven Accounting and Invisible Empire, who network and shop who you're dealing with. We have come across, like, if I could say anything with any businesses out there, don't get complacent with the people that are either providing your services or your subcontractors. If you're using a bookkeeper or an accounting firm, meet with a different one once a year. If you're using a business consultant or a business coach or a bank, meet with different banks. If you're using RBC, meet with ATB. That's one big thing we learn is, especially with the accounting and the bookkeeping area, we come across so many accountants and bookkeepers that are not looking out for the business. There's a big difference from just coding things and inputting data and sending billable hours versus actually looking out for the profitability of the small business. So if you're using a marketing firm, meet with a different marketing firm. Don't get complacent and just think that everybody knows what they're doing, because we're all in the same boat, whether we have fancy logos, websites, bricks and mortar, office buildings. We all make mistakes, and there are people better out there than others. So it was one thing that I've learned is we consistently across 15, 16 companies now, we shop suppliers, we shop everybody that provides us services, all our vendors, we meet with at least once or twice a year. And I think the biggest thing we've come across is that anything in business at our Invisible Empire, we have such a wide range of services, and we've changed things within businesses with just simple things. And it's these people's and professionals' job to enlighten these businesses on changing these things. And sometimes they just don't.
Okay. What is the long-term vision of your company? Do you see your company expanding into other areas beyond Calgary, Alberta, or even Canada?
Yeah, absolutely. We focus quite a bit on Alberta right now. We're from Alberta. We've done business in Alberta for so long. So a lot of our branding is Alberta based and Alberta owned and operated. But once we get that under control and get that situated and get caught up with the demand, absolutely. No, we won't stop. We'll go west, we'll go east, and we'll try and put a rocket on Mars if we can and do whatever we can keep going. Me and my wife are just kind of like that. We find the passion in creating and scaling and growing, and believe it or not, the bigger you get, I find the easier it gets sometimes.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit. You did mention Alberta and what that looks like. We want to kind of dive into, you're from Alberta, you're doing business in Alberta. From someone outside who hasn't been to Alberta, but maybe wants to come to Alberta, start a business, whatever that looks like, has Alberta served you well as a business owner, an entrepreneur?
Yeah, you know what, I would say it has. I mean, we, with Invisible Empire and our companies, we know no different than operating in a pandemic, not strategy. It just happened that way. We, got backed into it. And so, but even past that in our careers, we've never really had issues finding jobs. And then even the Alberta economy, since we don't know any different than operating in a pandemic, we don't know what it's like operating in a boom. So it has served us well. The employee base is good. The one thing, it's fast. It's very fast paced. It's very competitive. And it's a competitive market. Just in auto glass alone, I think there's 60, 70 auto glass, places just here
with
in town.
big ad budgets, I imagine, right?
Some of them bigger than others. I mean, the main players absolutely have big ad budgets, and it's kind of a little secret thing. Like Alberta, we drop so much rocks on the road that auto glass is kind of that little area that people don't really think. But then once they say, "Oh wow, yeah, there's a ton of rocks on the road," it makes sense to people. But no, it has. I mean, it's tough in certain industries with construction and different things. The winters definitely kind of slow down, but as long as you're running your forecasts and your financials and your cash flow and stuff, all that stuff you can plan for. So I would say Alberta served us very well, especially in my career, even prior to being an entrepreneur. Went through booms, went through downs, and Alberta's downtimes seem to be just less invasive than other downtimes in other areas.
So when you talk about downtime, how do you deal with fear and doubt? Like, when especially with COVID and when you guys started, daring time to get started, and how do you overcome that when it's like, okay, the odds might be stacked against us and the fear and doubt is creeping in, and how do you overcome that?
We overcame it by lack of choice. We planned a couple businesses for almost 6 months to a year. And then right around open date, COVID hit. So we bought a commercial building February 26th, signed the paperwork on it. And then the pandemic was announced a week later. And then we were going to start a big construction project on that building. And then the lockdowns were announced a week later. So yeah, it was definitely scary, but resilience, I guess. I've always been that character that probably doesn't recognize the level of risks I do take. So that probably helps just within my personality, but tightness. I mean, you plan things, be proactive, make sure you're managing your cash flow, your forecast. I mean, there's so many businesses that we meet with on a regular basis that don't know whether their revenue is this per year or this per year. Know your numbers. If you know your numbers, that can limit some of the risk because you can plan for everything, whether you cut programs, whether you do this, whether you do that. But I don't know if I could share a big secret to it. I think we got backed into it. It was a really bad circumstance with a lot of planning, and we were kind of like, well, let's just fight our way through it. And we've kind of been doing it ever since. So partly personality, and then probably a lot of proactive planning, a ton of proactive planning.
Yeah, you sound like you're keen on delegation and trusting employees or people to take that over. Yeah. How do you bridge that and say, I can trust you and run with me? Because you've got a lot of different companies kind of, that you got your hands in. And where's that trust factor of delegation? And can you find good people in Alberta that you can really kind of say, hey, take the reins and keep one eye on it? Yeah.
It's the culture we've created. I think it's hard for me. I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to swear on this podcast, but we'll throw it out there. But
sure, go ahead.
Yeah, the smoke and the bullshit is kind of like our tagline with things. Like, I just can't work with that. If you're going to call in sick and you're going to lie about it, you're probably going to be removed from our organization. We hold a ridiculously high standard, hold people's feet to the fire on their commitments. If they make a deadline and they can't hit it, communicate openly. But you also have to be able to hire slow and fire fast. It's kind of one of those things that you hear a lot, but it's weighted true. If an employee lies to you about something and you're 100% sure they're lying, move on. And everybody gets caught in the fact of like, oh, I can't find another chef, or oh, I can't hire another person. And if you need hiring help, it's not hard. Come to us, we'll help you. But keeping that person in the organization, keeping them affecting your other employee base. And if you think that the other employees don't look at that person and say, why is he still here or she still here? They are. So, I mean, I think we hold a very high standard. We kind of make a career out of holding people's feet to the fire. If they make a commitment, do it. We don't expect people to be perfect, but I think it's the culture we create. I probably admit to more mistakes than any of my staff combined. I take more risks than any of my staff combined. And I'm the person that'll come and say, shit, sorry, guys. I, pardon my French, I fucked that up. I'll learn from it. We'll move forward. That's not on you guys. That's on leadership and direction. And that was my error. And sometimes I make errors for 6 months at a time. I mean, you direct things over to websites that shouldn't be worked on, or you should be focusing on different areas. And if when your staff can work for somebody that can acknowledge that they make mistakes and they aren't perfect and they don't go blame their staff for everything that's happening within the business. I tell my staff all the time, if you're not going to work for me, work for somebody that can admit their mistakes and doesn't put the business's fault on the staff, because it's very rarely the staff. It's going to be the leadership. It's going to be the direction. It's going to be the structure. It's going to be the vision of the company. It's very rarely the staff. The staff want to do a good job. And if you have untrustworthy people in your organization, move on. Move on. Don't sit and think about it for 3 months. Don't think you can't find somebody else, because every time we've moved on from somebody that we've known is untrustworthy, everything has gotten astronomically better very quickly, because you start realizing they weren't doing their job anyways. And it actually creates more work within the organization on the other people. So anytime we've been worried about moving on from somebody that is not a fit, everything's just magically aligned itself right after that. And it just seems to happen that way.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about Alberta. You're a very, very busy guy. You work with your wife. How do you balance your life with, I mean, you guys are obviously working together, but where do you kind of step away from it and maybe not even talk about work? Is there a kind of a after 6 o'clock, let's get back to our lives, or is it constantly dragging it around the house, or how do you manage that?
Great question. I think surprise to people, my wife would probably be more inclined to talk about business outside of business than even I am. But a lot of it lies within our relationship and what drives our passion. Like, our passion really is helping people. You need to make money to keep your businesses going, but creation, passion, helping people. And then, like, our kids are our life. Like, I'm that dad that just is upset that if I'm not home for dinner. So, I mean, we love spending time with our kids. We love taking off, and we'd both rather work. The old saying goes, we'd rather work 80 to 100 hours a week for ourselves than 40 or 50 hours a week for somebody else, because me and my daughter will take off to Canmore on a Thursday because we feel like it. Or my wife will just take a day on a Tuesday to take our son to the mall. And we definitely balance that out. The staff and the delegation helps. We're both very good at that. But within our personal life, we communicate a ton. We're very equal. Like, I mean, my wife does laundry and I don't. We tag team pretty much everything, from business to personal as well. So a lot of it's communication, a lot of it's making time. We try and both of our assistants clear our schedules on Fridays, and we drive around together and visit small businesses in Calgary and try and bring awareness to them. Or we decide to take our kids to Edmonton on Friday, and we really try and, it's not that we get every Friday off, but we try and schedule it. Like, we try and actually schedule it. We schedule dinners together twice a month on Wednesday nights, and it takes a lot of work, and we're very busy. But I don't really think we do it any other way. I think it works very well for us. So communication, schedule, structure, and just the passion. We're not those parents that want to, not spend time with our kids or do that stuff. So it's pretty easy within our personalities when our favorite thing to do is spend time as a family.
Yeah. Part of being an entrepreneur is staying physically fit. Do you have a routine, exercise routine that keeps you top of your game?
I'd love to say yes, but you take in the smoke and the bullshit with it. Yes. I mean, me and my wife exercise pretty regularly. We're up very early. So I'm kind of a 5 a.m. to 5:30 kind of riser. I like the quiet. I don't find I can do much past 8, 9 o'clock at night anyways. So, if we're in bed at 9:30, 10, gives us the ability to get up early. Like, if me and my wife sleep till 6:30 and the kid wakes us up, it's sheer panic, because then we haven't got an hour or two into our work day. I love nothing more than getting up at 5 and getting to all my emails. Like, by the time the rest of the world wakes up, I'm caught up on anything that I've got going in that morning. So we exercise pretty regularly, whether it be at the Y or, I don't like exercising. I mean, if people are like, oh, I love going to the gym, it's like, wow, teach me how to love going to the gym. It's like,
it's a chore. It's a chore.
It's a chore. I'm the guy that goes and exercises 3 times a day for 3 weeks before we go to Kelowna, so I don't feel bad about it. But I know a lot of home. Like, my wife does a lot of Pilates at home, and then my daughter's fallen in love with it. So now my daughter does it, and she keeps us almost, but we got a membership to the Y. That's been huge because like we take the kids swimming all the time or basketball or pickleball. Like I'm that guy that has to mix interest in with exercise. So going to the buddy system helps. Like when you load up the family and go to the Y and it's like, hey, we're going to go to the Y. And I'm like, shit. Okay, fine. I'll exercise. So yeah, we have a little bit of a routine, but waking up early is a big thing. We get a couple hours in our day before anybody else. So.
Okay. If you weren't doing what you do now, what would you like to do for a profession? If everything just changed for you and money was not a factor and you could do whatever you like, what would you do? What would be like something that you could say, something outside of what you're doing now?
Probably outside sales. Like power of persuasion, I find is one of the key skill sets in the world. I mean, if you can master power of persuasion, you can pretty much do anything and learn anything past that. Maybe something in real estate or VRBOs. I mean, we love traveling with the kids and going to little neat towns in Kimberley, BC and stuff like that and see little houses we could renovate and have VRBOs there. We've always talked about doing that. So maybe something in VRBO, get a little bit of a less hectic schedule and, maybe move out to 20 acres and start building little cottages that you can rent out. But yes, or outside sales. I mean, outside sales I've always loved. And it's kind of a cool little world because most people are afraid of it. Not judgmental. They just are. Public speaking, I think, is number 2 or number 3 worst fear in the world. I've always loved public speaking. So maybe public speaking, not that I want to be a Tony Robbins or anything like that. I like keeping to myself, but helping people, something in the area of outside sales, but it would be tough. I don't know. I love what I'm doing right now so much that's actually an interesting question. I haven't been asked that in a long time.
Yeah, you touched on an interesting point, the power of persuasion. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs don't really come to terms with because they may have their widget, their software, their app, whatever it is. But being able to sell that, I think, I was watching an interview with Mark Cuban and he said, if you're an entrepreneur, you're a salesman. Do you believe in that?
100%. Oh, 100%. Me and my wife, I people say I was born with the gift for gab, and I don't know if that's true or not, but my mentor kind of figured out, hey, stop working with your hands, start working with your brain and your voice. And that was the opportunity I got at a young age to do that. And then when you spend time with people who are very good at it, I was blessed to spend time with a lot of older people when I was younger. And I don't mean older, but in their mid 30s, like early 40s. And they were very good talkers. And you pick up on it. And my wife spending so much time with me, she's phenomenal at that, but she's picked up on a lot of my tendencies in my area of sales. And I've picked up on her softness as well. But yeah, I believe that 100%. If someone came to me and said, what would be the number one skill set an entrepreneur should have? Sales ability, power of persuasion. And it's not sales when you walk into a brick furniture store and you get bombarded by salespeople trying to
$9.99 just today.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, beat it. No, it's how do you sit and have conversations with banks? How do you make sure lawyers aren't trying to just billable hours? How do you express your concerns with your accountant? How do you lead your team? How do you communicate to them openly? Power of persuasion goes into so many areas that it's not just trying to convince people to buy a product or trying to convince people to renovate their house. That's a lot of that is done by computer programs and good branding and software now. It's much more about being able to carry an intellectual or non-intellectual conversation with anybody from any level of things. It helps your business on every angle. If people have trouble communicating, I truly believe entrepreneurship they will have more difficulty in their own business than they need to be if they're scared of communication or have trouble with it. Absolutely.
So if you were to advise an entrepreneur who's starting out, you would probably tell them sales and communication ability is key.
100%. It's so key. Knowing your numbers, but you can hire people for that if you hire good ones. There's a lot, I learned a lot in the digital world and you can hire people for that. Can you hire salespeople? Absolutely. But if you're not a good salesperson, how do you, number one, know that they're doing a good job, or how do you lead them moving forward? I would say it's number one, in my opinion. I might be biased to it, but absolutely. Read as many books as you can. Repetition. I mean, networking. I mean, even if you're a bad communicator, go get an outside, go work at McDonald's or a retail place. Like, you got to get experience communicating with people. It's huge. I would say so.
Are you a big reader? Do you have any books you could recommend?
Oh, wow. I think to be completely honest, I've probably read actual flipped pages, read 5 or less books in my life. But I listen to audiobooks. Reading's not my thing, but I will listen to audiobooks quite a bit. Listen to a lot of podcasts from a lot of good people. But um, Carnegie has some really good books on people, and I mean, there's so many good audiobooks out there right now. But I would say Extreme Ownership would be. We make our staff read Extreme Ownership, and not that we make it part of when they start. But
Wasn't that book? That's a book written by the Navy SEALs.
100%. It's got to be. I would say it's hands down not only my favorite book that I've ever read or listened to, but also the most effective in confirming the culture we create and confirming how diligent we are at holding that standard. It's unmatched. I mean, if you possess the power of extreme ownership and acknowledgement and self-awareness, wow, your life is so much easier in every single relationship you have. So I think it's extreme ownership. Every human that resides in the country should either listen to it or read it. I think our society would change immediately.
Especially if you're an entrepreneur, I guess that would be like a must before you embark upon your own business.
If you're absolutely not only holding yourself accountable, but if you plan on having any staff or growing extreme owner, best book out there. I would recommend it to everybody.
Do you have any 2 words that would describe yourself? If someone said, describe yourself in 2 words, what would it be?
Ooh, relentless, in a good way, persistent. Yeah. I mean, which I guess are kind of the same. So maybe a slash of persistent and relentless. And then I'd probably throw creative in there, even to a point of detriment with extreme ownership. I don't give a shit about admitting my faults, but I have a very creative mind. I love creating, whether it be processes, whether it be financials, whether it be new logos, new companies, new websites, new platforms. And sometimes the operations and the money need to come ahead of the creativity. And I've gotten caught definitely in the first 3-4 years, putting the creativity ahead of the operations, which then you need the persistence to power through your fuck ups when you put the creative ahead of that. So really a mixture between those 3 words.
Good. Okay. You did mention earlier mentors, people that obviously have guided you along the way in some way, shape, or form. Has any mentor or anyone has given you advice you've received that you can pass on to entrepreneurs throughout Canada? Is there anything that someone has told you that resonated with you that said, you know what, we've mentioned a lot of things here, but anything that kind of stood out as saying or something that you say, you know what, this is great advice?
Mickey Mouse can never have a bad day. The owner of the company I worked for at the time, he founded that company, and I was lucky to be a part of the scale and the growth of that business. And that he gave me a lot of those interesting quotes and a lot of those, and I'm far from perfect. There's, mentors that pay you to tolerate them. And then there's mentors you choose, and there's all sorts of different mentors. You have to take the good with the bad, but Mickey Mouse can never have a bad day.
What does that mean?
Mickey Mouse shows up to Disneyland and he's stumbling and he's grumpy and he's tired and he hasn't slept for an hour and he just doesn't feel like communicating with the kids, or he doesn't feel like walking around and being bubbly. Mickey Mouse is just not allowed to have a bad day. He has to show up to his job every single day and be Mickey Mouse, because there's kids and there's hundreds of thousands of people rolling into that place. If you own a company, you start a company and you have 1 staff member, you have 4 staff members, you have 20 staff members, it's not your staff's problem with what's going on. You have to be as consistent as you can. If you're falling apart over here, your marriage is on the rocks and you're fine, you can't put that burden on your staff, because as much as you want to be close to them and include them, and I'm friends with numerous of my staff and I'm very close, I come in here, I try to, I'm not perfect, but I would hope my staff would say that I come in here with the same smile, the same tone, the same voice, no matter what. If we're not being paid for a big construction project, if we just lost and couldn't open a new location, I don't come in here and put that on them. You have to be consistent. The direction has to be consistent, and your image, and not so much your image, but the perception of the owner has to always display a positive moving forward. So, I mean, that's one that's always stuck to me because I actually find I practice that pretty heavily every day. I'm the same. It's, hey guys, how's it going? And everything's the same with me, regardless of what I have going on outside the business. So Mickey Mouse can never have a bad day. Owners can't have a bad day. Sounds harsh, but it's very, very true.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because, you're human, you have everyday problems, but when you come to the stage of your business, you've got to put on a good show and make sure that everyone's part of the vision, and because you're the one driving the ship, right? And if you're looking like everything's falling apart and then, oh my God, drama, you can't, portray that because it's the steady keel. I think that wins the game.
It is. And especially staff turnover, staff retention, like staff do a good job when they believe in the direction that they're going, in the direction of the business. And I'm not saying you can't have bad days. I have bad days all the time. I have stressful stuff, like interest rates go up. Interest rates don't go up in one company for us. They go up in 16. So of course it affected us. Of course it hurt us. But I don't come in here for an hour and have a meeting and take out my stress in some big meeting. Everybody needs to sell more because interest rates are going up. No, you have to stay consistent. And if you're having that bad of a day where you just don't feel like you can put on that face, I work from home that day. I go do outside sales calls that day. I go do site visits. I put a lot of effort in trying to structure my life so that doesn't bleed onto your staff, because it's not that you can't, it's not that you have to be perfect. It's that your business has to come first. And staff retention is one of the most difficult things that small business owners deal with. Like a staff member quits and it's a big deal. And that helps a lot with staff retention. If they believe in the positive direction of the business, staff don't want to work in a place where it's all bad news all the time.
Yeah. Okay, Brad, we're going to wrap things up. How can our listeners get hold of you? Is there anything you'd like to add before you leave us today?
They check out our website, www.ourinvisibleempire.com, like our. We have all our social channels. You can find those through the website. And, the biggest thing I would say is if you're struggling, if the biggest thing, we meet with entrepreneurs and we take pitch meetings and we help them and get involved in business. And I would say the number one thing is that they don't want to be doing it by themselves anymore. And they feel like if they get support, you can get support from a marketing firm or an accounting firm or all these different things, but it's hard. You're paying these people to support you. And are they supporting you or are they racking up billables? So, the biggest thing is people don't want to be by themselves, and there's no shame in that. Come in, if you want to come see us and come chat, that's the biggest thing we're getting involved in, is people just want to be a part of more of a team. And that's what our Invisible Empire provides. Like, we just provide a support center where they can be rest assured that they're not just getting dinged on retainers every month or different things. We align themselves with them. And we really honestly are just here to help. We love helping people, and we probably should have made a lot more money than we should, but we've helped a lot of businesses in the process. So if you're struggling and you think you got 3 months left, or you're doing good and you want to scale and you just are tired of going at it by yourself and need someone, give us a call and we'd be happy to meet and talk business with anybody. We're not those suit and ties, this, that. People see our website and that's not the case with us. We run around in track pants and just chat business and see how we can do good things.
Good. Okay. Brad, thanks for coming on the show. I've learned a lot about you, and I'm sure our listeners have as well.
I really appreciate you having me. Absolutely.
Great. We'll see you next time.